Today is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2015, and we are interviewing Mr. John Garcia at the Illinois State Library in Springfield, Illinois. Mr. Garcia is 67 years old, having been born on November 24th, 1947. My name is Joanne Jennings, and I'll be your interviewer today. Please state for the recording what war and branch of service you served in.
I served in the Vietnam War with the United States Army paratroopers.
And where were you born?
Chicago, Illinois.
And can you tell me a little bit about your family growing up, your parents, their names, their occupations?
My dad was American Indian from Texas, Apache, and my mother was from Mexico. She was born in Mexico, but they both were raised or met in Chicago. And my mother, with my father, had 5 children, me and my 4 sisters. And later on, she divorced my dad, and she remarried and had 2 more children, which I have another brother and sister. And we were all raised on the south side of Chicago, basically by my mom. She was both mother and father to me. And she was a loving but strict. I mean, she didn't fool around. I mean, I am what I am today because of her, because she made sure I stood on the straight and narrow until I got older, and then I didn't start listening to her. I mean, I sort of like became a rebel in my teenager years, like 15.
Were any of your siblings or parents in the military?
And my dad was never in the military, but his brother was in World War II. He served in Europe with the 3rd Infantry Division. He was with Audie Murphy.
Okay.
Yeah, he served with Audie Murphy in Italy. He was in the 3rd Infantry Division. He was really proud of that.
Wow.
And my mother's brother, she only had one brother, and he served in the Pacific. He was with General MacArthur in the Philippines and Guadalcanal in New Guinea. And they both came back from the war. And I love both of my uncles. They were very good to me. And my mother never thought I would be in the war because she figured that was the war to end all wars. So when she found out I was going to go to Vietnam, she wasn't too happy, but yeah, she accepted it.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
No, I enlisted.
You enlisted?
I enlisted in the United States Army. So after high school, well, about a year after I got out of high school.
So what were you doing? Working or going to college?
I was employed. After I got out of high school, I was 17, so I couldn't get a job in a factory because you had to be 18 to work around power equipment. But I graduated, like I said, I was graduating when I was 17, and I went to Wright Junior College on the north side of Chicago for a semester, and then my best friend came in April of 65, informed me that he was going to go to the military, to the Army, and if I wanted to join with him. So I figured I wasn't doing anything. I didn't want to get in trouble because where I lived at, there were a lot of gangs, and I was associating with some gang members. And I figured out I didn't want to get in too much trouble, so I decided to join the Army with him. So we joined the Army in May of 65. May 14th to be exact.
May 14th, 1965.
That's when we joined.
And when did your service end? What
May
date?
14, 1968.
Okay.
I didn't imagine I was going to be a paratrooper. I didn't join to be a paratrooper. I joined to be in the medical field. I liked, in high school, I liked biology, so I figured they asked me what would I like to do, and since I did well on the test, the entrance exam to the military, they said I almost had my choice of whatever I wanted, so I said I'd like to be in the medical field. So they said, well, you want to be a medic? I said, fine, that sounds okay. And that's why I wanted to work in the laboratory, in the lab, working with.
And you chose the Army because your buddy was going into the Army?
Yeah, we joined together. He was going, and I said, he was my best friend, and I say, yeah, well, we joined on the buddy plan. They call it the buddy plan, where they guarantee you going through basic training together. And that was all they guarantee you. But as it worked out, we went through everything together. We went to basic training and then advanced individual training for medical training. And then we both volunteered for the paratroops in medical school. And we passed the test for that. So we went to paratrooper school, they call it jump school. And we passed there, and then we were assigned to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky as medics, and the only medics they used in the airborne were combat medics. So I never assumed I was going to be in combat, but that was my destiny.
Mm-hmm. So were you 17 or 18 when you enlisted?
18.
18?
I just turned 18.
And what rank did you achieve?
Sergeant.
Sergeant?
5. I couldn't keep it though. I kept getting in too much trouble. So,
What kind of trouble?
well, fighting and drinking, you know,
Okay.
down in town, and you know.
Okay, so you enlisted, and tell me where did you go after that? Where was boot camp, your
Well,
training?
we took basic training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, which is the home of the armor. That's got the center. It used to be Armor Training Center, and it was very hot down there, and it was near Louisville, Kentucky. And after that, we finished our basic training, which was about, I think, 8 weeks. We were sent to Fort Sam Houston for medical training to be a medical corpsman, and that was like 10 weeks of training. And then when we graduated from there, we volunteered for the paratroopers, and we were accepted. We passed those exams, and we got sent to Fort Benning, Georgia. Medical school was in Fort Sam Houston, San Antonio, Texas, was medical training. From San Antonio, for Fort Sam Houston, San Antonio, we were sent to Fort Benning, Georgia for paratrooper school, or jump school. And we were there about 4 weeks. And from there, we were already assigned to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, where we, were accepted as medics there, combat medics there. And
Was your buddy still with you at that time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, he was assigned to the 101st Airborne, but we were in different battalions. He was in the 501st, and I was assigned to the 326 Medical Battalion, Airborne, at Fort Campbell.
326 Medical.
326 Medical Battalion. And we were there approximately 6 months. And in May of '66, I was issued some orders to report to Vietnam. I was hoping to go to the 101st in Vietnam, but they was assigned to 173rd Airborne Brigade in Vietnam, which I never was familiar with that unit because it was fairly new.
Mm-hmm.
And I had kind of second thought about going there because I wanted to go to the 101st Airborne in Vietnam because we had a brigade there. And but when I had my orders for the 173rd, I have to obey my orders, so I went to the 173rd. And at the same time, my buddy, they took his battalion and they took his whole battalion, they made him part of the 173rd. But they went over on a boat, and I went on individual orders on a plane. So I got there like about a month before he got there.
Oh, wow.
We were in 2 different battalions. He was in the 4th Battalion, 503rd, and I was assigned to the 2nd Battalion of the 503rd Parachute Infantry. But we eventually met up again in Vietnam, in Bien Hoa. Our base camp was located at Bien Hoa, Vietnam. We were protecting an air base there, and we were on perimeter for this big air base at Bien Hoa. And it was just two battalions. It was 1st and 2nd. I was in the 2nd, and 1st was on the other side. And then when my buddy came in, they were the 4th Battalion. They were assigned to one section of the perimeter also, but it was just, we were just there briefly. We were always in the field. We were always on search and destroy operations.
Mhm.
We were always on heliborne assaults and, looking for the enemy. That was our job, just search and destroy them, and search for them and then destroy them. But I, I was, I was very scared when I got there, I tell you. But when I asked my sergeant, finally when I got to my unit in the field, in the perimeter, I asked my sergeant how far were we away from the front lines. And he told me, Garcia, you're standing on it.
Oh, my. Oh.
This is it.
Mhm.
And he pointed to some barbed wire and he said, see that barbed wire right there? That's it. That's the enemies are on the other side of that. So I was really afraid then. I said, there's no
Wake
one,
up call.
there are no more friendly units in front of us. He goes, this is it. We're the last line. The enemy's right in front of us.
Mhm.
So I knew it. I was very, very apprehensive about that. But I had to make the best of it. You're a paratrooper, you're a soldier. This is what you volunteered for.
Right.
And the paratroopers, there are no, they don't draft you into the paratroopers. You got to ask them to let you become a paratrooper. There's all volunteers.
Right.
So if something happens, you can't say, well, I didn't want to be here. It's a lie because you volunteered for it.
Mhm. Mhm.
They can draft you into the Army, they can draft you into the Navy, they can draft you into the Marines or the Coast Guard, but they cannot draft you into the paratroopers. That's all volunteer.
Okay.
They cannot make you jump out of a plane.
Mhm.
So you have to have
Mhm.
the guts and the willpower. And of course, you got to overcome that fear because, I admit you, I was afraid when I jumped.
Mhm. Every time?
Huh?
When you first got there, you were afraid. Did you,
When I
Like
first
it.
got to where, Vietnam?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was terrified.
did that diminish any, or was it the same level of, were you terrified the whole time?
No,
or was
no,
it-
eventually you
You adapted?
you more or less accepted your fate and your conditions, and you listened to the other guys who were there, and you learn from the guys who've been there a while, and after a while they made you feel comfortable because you're all together and you're like a team, and we look out for each other.
Mhm.
There wasn't too much racial tension or animosity. Everybody, I didn't care what color anybody was. It was you got to save my life. If it was white, black, brown, or green, I don't care.
How many of you were there in your unit?
Well, I was originally in a company. Well, I was in a company, and then I was assigned a platoon because I was a platoon medic, and which is usually in the States, a platoon is usually about 50 men. But in Vietnam, since we always had people getting wounded and killed, and people going home, people going on R&R, we were lucky we had 30, 35 men in a platoon.
Okay.
And as a medic, I was responsible for their medical needs. And it was a lot of responsibility because not only did I look out for myself, I had to look out for my men, the other 30, 35 guys that were in my platoon. And I had a lot of time to make a decision. I never forget the first time I had a medical situation where we had wounded, and the lieutenant and the captain came up to me, and we had some wounded, and I was attending to them, and they asked me, "Hey, Doc," that's what they called the medics over there, was Doc. Doc, who do you want to go first on the helicopter? Because they had what we called it medevac, dust off. It was the medical helicopter would come in and pick up our wounded, and they only could put about 2 or 3 stretchers on at a time. So the lieutenant and the captain asked me, who do you want to go first? And which really surprised me because I thought that was their decision.
Mhm.
And the captain looked at me and says, Doc, you're the only medical authority out here. He says, I can't override your decision. If you say that guy's got to go, I got to let you put that guy first, because you're the medical authority out here, I was only, 19 years old, and I had all this responsibility. I didn't know anybody. And I had no idea what triage was. I learned that later. You know what triage is?
You assess which one?
Yeah, you've got to assess which ones are going to make it and which are not. And it's hard to do because sometimes it may be your buddy who's laying there, he's dying, and you can't put him on there because he's going to die. And you got to get somebody else on there who's going to will maybe make it. Maybe he's got a sucking chest wound, or he's got a wound in the limb, arm or leg, and if you get him to the hospital fast enough, he probably live. And if you see a guy with his intestines hanging out, that guy probably won't make it because he's bleeding and he's lost, So it was very, very, very hard to do. I mean, it was a very hard job for me, because I didn't want to lose any of my men, but I couldn't save everybody. A lot of those guys died.
Do you know how many you lost?
Too many.
Too many.
I don't even want to think about how many men we lost. We lost, sometimes we lose one guy, sometimes we lose 20 guys. I remember one time we lost about 19 men in an ambush, and
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
they killed the medic, they killed the lieutenant, they killed the sergeant, the RTO. They got ambushed, and it was always like God was always with me, because sometimes I was supposed to go with that platoon, and sometimes they would, at the last minute, the sergeant would send these, no, you stay here, you stay with this other platoon, and let this other medic take that platoon, and then that platoon would run into trouble, and if I had gone, I'd probably be dead, wouldn't be here, because that medic got killed.
Mm-hmm.
So it was no place for crybabies, or I wanted to cry. I never cried in Vietnam. Never cried. And I wanted to cry because some of those guys I knew. I knew them from basic training, jungle school. I knew them from there. We were close. We were friends. And I just sometimes, after the battle was over, or the firefight was over, I just sit there on a log or a stone, and I think to myself, why can't I cry? I want to cry for this guy. I knew him since we got here together. And the tears wouldn't come. I mean, it was just, I asked my psychiatrist now, I said, why couldn't I cry? I cry now like a baby. I see a sad movie or, something that reminds me of one of my buddies got killed over there, and I start crying because I remember that, and I remember when they died. And God blessed me with a good memory. It was a blessing or a curse, because people ask me, how do you remember that? And I said, I remember, and I got a good memory. And I just don't know, why I couldn't cry until I finally, and I didn't even know what PTSD was until 20 years after I came back from the war. I met a guy who was with me in Vietnam, and I was so happy to see him, because he was the first guy I ever met that was with me actually in Vietnam in combat. And he was in my platoon.
Okay, you knew him.
We met in 1986. They had a Vietnam veterans welcome home parade in Chicago. It was the first one they had there since the Vietnam, since 74. It was 1986. And I met him at this parade in Chicago, and he said he was at the VA hospital up in North Chicago for PTSD, which I didn't know what PTSD was, because I was working. I had a job with the state. I worked for the state of Illinois as a veterans representative, and also as a parole officer, and as an adjudicator for unemployment insurance. I had 3 jobs. I was with the state for about 35 years. And I worked first, originally I was a veterans employment representative for the state, where I worked with the Illinois Department of Labor. And I got hired in 71. But getting back to Vietnam, there were so many, I didn't understand sometimes. I'd be in firefights where there were dead and wounded all around me. The enemy and our men would be dead and wounded, and I wouldn't have a scratch. I only was wounded one time. And I refused to be evacuated because it was just a flesh wound, and I just put a Band-Aid around it, and I refused to get on the helicopter because I didn't want to leave my men. Of course, they looked at me like with those cow eyes, saying, "You're not leaving us out without medic," and they depended on me, because it was just, I think it's psychological. They just felt better when I was there, even though I wasn't a doctor, and even we had one doctor for 1,000 men.
You were a trained medic. You could assist
Well,
them
I love my men. I mean, and I was part of the team, and I was wounded, but I figured, I'd heal. I just put a Band-Aid around it, Band-Aid.
Was it your arm? Where?
No, my hand.
Your hand?
See, it's the crooked. And then my shoulder, and it was just like fragment wounds. I got hit by some shrapnel. But I couldn't complain, because some guys, lost their lives and their limbs, and so I just, didn't understand. I guess I prayed a lot. I asked God to help me, because I wanted to help my men, but they died on me. A lot of them died on me. I couldn't save all of them. That's what makes me sad. I still, think of them. The day doesn't go by. Sometimes I don't think about Vietnam, and I hear something, I hear a song, or I smell something, or I see a movie or something and I flash back.
Mhm.
And it's gotten better. I used to cry a lot, but I still cry sometimes, but not as much as I used to because it's my psychiatrist says it's it's going to be with you till the day you die.
Mhm.
And I tell you to forget about it. You don't forget things like that. My last engagement with the enemy in our firefight, we lost 78 paratroopers that day. In one day, we lost 78 killed. June 22nd, 1967. It was a horrible day for us. I mean,
What happened? I mean,
we
can you tell
we
me?
were in the field and we were up around Dak To. We just got assigned to this new area. We were down in Benoit, and then they moved us our base camp up to Dak To, which
And
was
you,
like
like,
by the Cambodian border.
marched there? Is that how you
Oh
moved
no, we
from
moved
one?
by truck or by
truck?
helicopter
Okay,
or
okay,
plane.
okay.
C-130s. They took all our equipment and everything, and majority was moved by C-130 cargo planes,
Okay.
and we were moved basically by helicopters and convoys. So, but we were in a new area, and we got foolish, and it was A Company. I was in Charlie Company, and A Company is the one that got hit that day, and they lost 78 men. That was, but we finally, when we found them that night, we couldn't go into their perimeter because they were still shooting in there, and the captain or the colonel didn't know what exactly the situation was in there. So it was dark as a night, and in Vietnam at night it's pitch black out there. I mean, you can't see your hand in front of you
Mhm.
unless there's a moon. If there's a full moon out there, then it's almost like daylight to us because we're the moon would be full and you could see pretty good. I remember my platoon sergeant who got killed later on. He would write at night to his wife in the moonlight because we'd be on we'd be on watch or guard. And I'd see him sitting there writing, and I'd say, "What are you doing, Sarge?" And he'd say, "I'm writing to my wife, you know." And he was from Puerto Rico, Sergeant Sayas. He got killed. He got killed later on, and I felt bad about it because
What
he
happened?
was,
Can you tell me what happened, the situation with him?
well, he got ambushed. He didn't get killed that day. He got killed before that. That happened in June. He got killed I think in March. He was the platoon sergeant. The lieutenant got killed. The radio operator got killed. The medic got killed, and about about 14 other guys got killed that day in an ambush. Also, we ran into some trouble, and
Were they on the move or were they just sitting?
we were on
there?
patrol.
On patrol.
No, we were searching and destroy. They engaged the enemy, and the
I
enemy
see.
surrounded them.
Oh.
It was a bigger force than they thought it was. That's the only time we sustained casualties when we underestimated the size of the enemy force. If we thought they were like a platoon, maybe it was a company or a regiment, then when we lost those 78 guys, they ran to a regiment. We just had a company. It was like about 150 men. You know what I mean? So
how many would have
100, about
been
130. I think it was about 130 guys in a company,
in
and they
the,
lost 78 men that day.
but that they were fighting against? How many do you think were in there?
Oh, they had ran into at least about 500.
Oh my
500
gosh.
North Vietnamese. They were North Vietnamese regulars. I mean, they were army guys. They weren't guerrillas. They were North Vietnamese army. There was a difference. You had the guerrillas, Viet Cong guerrillas, and you had the NVA. We call it NVA. There was a hardcore North Vietnamese soldier. They had helmets. They had uniforms and everything. AK-47s,
Mhm.
RPGs, and they were loaded for bear too. So A Company underestimated their strength, and they paid the price. They lost 78 guys in one day. And when we finally went the next morning, when we went in to go try to help them, it was like Custer's last stand in there. I mean, there was just dead Americans everywhere. I mean, they were just.
Did any of them make it out?
Yeah, yeah. There were some wounded. Yeah, it's just like the rest of them were wounded. The ones that weren't dead were wounded, and some guys were able to crawl. We were able to help when we got at night when we got to their perimeter. The colonel wouldn't let us go in there, but they would. He said that we would be, as soon as daylight came, we were going to go in there. No matter what happens, we're going to go and try to rescue them. And we came in from one side, and B Company came in from the other side. Because in my battalion, I was in the 2nd Battalion of the 503rd Parachute Infantry. We had 4 companies, 3 rifle companies, 1 headquarters company. Headquarters was always backed by what they call LOC, and it was Alpha Bravo, Charlie were rifle companies, and I was in Charlie company, and A company was with us, and B company was in reserve that day. But the next morning after that happened, B company came in from one side, and we came in from the. We were there already, so we went into the perimeter. But like I said, they were just dead Americans everywhere. I mean, it was. We found out later that a lot of them, the NBA just executed them. They shot them in the head at night. They find them, and they took their weapons, they took their clothes. Some of them they cut off their rings, off their fingers, hands with watches and everything. It was horrible. It was, it's war. But it was an experience like that you never forget. You never forget those things. You never forget your men. I mean, people try to tell me to forget. I can't. I wish I could. I wish I could just erase it, but they were human beings. I mean, and the only thing I ever thought was the worst thing that can happen to a soldier is that you die and nobody remembers you. I think that's a tragedy. And to me, all those guys that were with me, I remember them. I remember until the day of that, because somebody has to remember them. Even though a lot of people say, well, I didn't know that guy. Well, someday I wish I could go to their families, each one of them, and tell their families how they died, that, they were good soldiers, that they died fighting for their country and fighting for their fellow man. Like I had a friend, he got there when we were both medics. His name was Arthur Gleason. He was from Syracuse, New York. And every time I meet somebody from Syracuse, I think about him and I want to cry. Because I remember he was. He died trying to save somebody. And I don't know if his family knows. Arthur Gleason from Syracuse, New York. He's on that wall. But I look at his name sometimes on the computer where his name is, and there's nothing written there like saying how he died or anything. I don't know. His sisters, he was raised by his sister, because I think he said his mother and father died, or he was like an orphan, I guess. But he told me he had sisters, and I don't know if his sisters or his family know how he died. He was a brave boy.
His name was Arthur Gleason from Syracuse, New York.
Yeah, Arthur Gleason was Syracuse, New York. And there was another guy who was from Corpus Christi. He was a medic too, and he had his last name just like mine. His name was Pedro Garcia. But we call him Pete. He got killed saving somebody. And there was like four medics I knew got killed. They went over with me. Gleason, Garcia, Green. Two of them were from New York. One was black, Moses Green. He was from Jamaica, New York. He got killed in that ambush with Sergeant Saez and Lieutenant Callahan. And Pete Garcia got killed when we got mortared. And he was trying to save somebody in the foxhole, and we got a direct hit. He died instantly too. And Gleason, he died trying to bring back a wounded man, and they told him not to go out there, and he said, no, I can get him. He went out there and he shot him. He got killed. But they all got killed within like about 3 or 4 months before we were supposed to go home.
Oh.
That's how sad it was. I mean, And Moses Green, he was from Jamaica, New York. Arthur Gleason, he was from Syracuse, New York. Pete Garcia, he was from Corpus Christi, Texas. And there were a lot more guys who got killed, but I remember them because those 3 guys were medics, just like me.
And you never met any of their families, or?
No, I was in contact with Pete Garcia's sisters for a while, but I haven't heard from them, so I don't know what happened to them. But like I said, I'd like to meet with Arthur Gleason's sisters and or his whoever was still alive and tell him how brave he was and how he died as a soldier. They should be proud of him. He died as a soldier. He's a good paratrooper. He was fearless. The kid was fearless. He ran out there like, he was John Wayne. He thought he could save the guy. So was Moses Green, Pete Garcia. They were all brave guys. When we were under fire, that was our job. We had to go out there and get the wounded or, try to save them, Medics are always getting kills just like RTOs and good lieutenants. We lost a lot of them. But, we made, my battalion made the only combat jump in Vietnam as a battalion. I know there was special forces and rangers. We were making jumps, but they were like five or six guys. But this is like close to 1,000 guys made the jump. It was called a battalion size jump. It was in Junction City. That was on February 22nd, 1967. And we made the jump and with very minimal casualties, but there was still a jump. It's a combat jump, so we were the only ones who made that jump. My battalion second with the 503rd. And we had a lot of good men, and a lot of times I like to go to town. I tell you, when we came out of the field, that's why I couldn't keep my sergeants right, because I figured if I was going to die, I wanted to die happy, so every chance I got, we come out of the field, we'd go to the field for 3 or 4 weeks at a time and then come back for 2 or 3 days. And first thing I do is clean up take a shower, change clothes and clean my weapons, and I go to town, get a beer and chase the girls.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I figured, hey, if I'm going to die, I may as well
Oh,
make the best of it, because I say ask my captain, then my captain would reprimand me. I get an Article 15. Sometimes an Article 30. That was 2 Article 15s at one time, because for fighting and being in parts of town where we weren't supposed to be. That's where usually the girls were at. And
you say you got an R-15?
Article 15.
Article 15.
Yeah, it's like
Discipline.
discipline.
For
yeah,
doing that,
yeah.
okay.
It's a choice. You either get an Article 15 or a court-martial.
Oh.
So you don't want a court-martial. You just say,
No.
give me the Article 15, which usually consists of them taking away your stripes and fining you like a month's pay or something, But, you could spend money out there anyway. I mean, you're out in the middle of the jungles. So, there's bars out there. I mean, the only bars were back in the rear where the town was at. They had a town there with Benoit, which they had a lot of bars there. Nice to hate those guys in the rear, because I wanted to be in the rear with them. That's where all the good times were, the girls and the booze, We're out there getting wounded and killed in the field. And they're having a good time back there, the cooks, the mechanics, See, for every soldier's in the front, there's like about 10 to 12 guys in the rear supporting that guy, like they said today at that meeting. There's cooks, mechanics, clerks, truck drivers, people working in the hospitals, the MASH and all that. Those are support. They support one soldier in the field. We call them, riflemen. And everybody supports the infantry. I mean, when the jets and come by and artillery, they bomb them with cannon fire, or the planes come in and they bomb them. Our job as infantry, we had to go in there and make sure they're dead. That's our job. And if they're not dead, we kill them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we call search and destroy. And I was a Christian. I never killed anybody in my life until I got to Vietnam. I mean, I never killed a woman or child. I never did that. I can sleep at night. I never, But I knew some of those villages that we bombed. I mean, there was women, children there. They were killed. But I remember one time I had to deliver a baby in a village. I was the medic, and they say, "Doc, it's a woman there. She's having a baby." And I said, "Hey, I'm not I never worked in a maternity ward. I said, hey, I'm not was it obstetrician, right? I said, I'm not. She says, well, you're the closest thing to a doctor. So I went down there and I helped deliver the baby, you know. That's, I never thought I would, but, it wasn't that hard. I mean, she did all the work. I mean, it
Was it a boy or a girl?
was a boy.
A boy.
So somewhere out there's some Vietnamese name, John Van Trang, you know what I mean?
Did she
She
name him
said,
John?
I guess so, yeah. She said, what's your name, G.I.? And I said, John, okay. Baby named John Van Trang or John Van Duck, whatever her last name was. But there was, some good times, but I try to remember the good times, but sometimes you got to remember the bad times because that's the way war is. I
You said
mean,
you can't erase those.
yeah, and I get angry when people tell me you got to forget. Then I never forget. I can accept it better now because thanks to the VA, I was in a PTSD program up in North Chicago, the Great Lakes, and they had a very good staff up there, and I really came back a different person. Of course, I worked for the state, and then my last position, like I said, I was originally hired as a veterans employment representative, working with Vietnam veterans coming back from the war in '71. And eventually I moved around, though. I did that for about 6 years, and then I went over to Department of Correction. I was a parole officer, and then I got tired of that. I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then I went over to unemployment insurance. I was an adjudicator for unemployment insurance the rest of the time. But I enjoyed working with people. I mean, I'm a people person. That's why I was a medic, and that's why I enjoy helping people. I mean, I didn't want to become a doctor. I said, well, how come you didn't become a doctor? I don't like seeing people suffer. When you're a doctor, you got to see people suffer. And it's one thing when you see it in books, when you actually got to put your hands in blood, you're trying to save somebody and they're bleeding, and sometimes you don't know what's going on, and it's scary. I mean, because they die, you think it's because you did something or you didn't do something, and it's a lot of responsibility. People don't understand that. Doctors have a lot of responsibility because if somebody dies, they're going to blame you. Especially, that's why they got so much malpractice and shit. Those poor guys, I mean, but when you're in combat, and I remember the doctor, we had one doctor per 1,000 men. They called him a battalion surgeon. He was an actual doctor. All the rest of us were medics. So he was in charge of us. He would have like critiques when we came back out of the field. That's where I learned how to do triage, because he said, if you see a guy with his guts, don't put him on the helicopter. He says you put somebody else that's is going to make it, because you guys were sending, because he would see them. They went back to MASH or back to the rear, and he would see some of those wounded, or some of us. Remember one time, poor guy got his leg blown off, and my buddy, when he put him on a stretcher, he put his leg right on top of his chest. Of course, when the guy, we shot him up with morphine, and I guess when the guy came out of shock or whatever, he saw his leg, he went back into shock. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of funny now, but I mean, it was kind of sad because he said, don't do that. He says, you put it underneath or hide it, or put it underneath, but don't put it right where the guy can see it. So there's things like that happen. There's a lot of I hate to say humorous, because war is not humorous. I mean, I don't want to belittle the gravity of the situation, because there was serious stuff out there. I mean, it was life and death, and the enemy wasn't dumb. I mean, they were watching us all the time, and I mean, they were good soldiers. I mean, they knew that terrain. That was their turf. That was their hoods. So they knew where everything was at. I mean, we were the new guys. We would know. But we learned, and we survived. But it was just so much death over there. I mean, when I left, I didn't want to ever go back to Vietnam. They asked me if I wanted to stay. I said, no, I'm going home. I said, after that 78 guys got killed that day, I said, no, I saw enough killing. I saw enough death. I seen enough. I don't want to see no more. And you come back a changed person. I didn't think I changed. My mother said, she says, "You changed, son." And I said, "No, Mom, I'm still your son." She says, "Yeah, you're still my son, John, but you're not the same person that you left as." I think that's why it affected my marriage. I mean, my wife thought I didn't love her because it was hard for me to say I love you. I mean, I was used to, we would go from village to village, town to town, and you would just pay your money and take your chances and keep going. I mean, we had no time to develop relationships with women. They were just wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, you know, and we move on. We were like those guys, and some of my buddies in the rear, they would tell me they had girlfriends back there, and because they had time, because they didn't, you know, they didn't come out to the field. And I never knew from day, there was a lot of stress. I never knew from day to day if I was gonna live from one day to another, because they would kill guys, you know, or wounded, or we had wounded and dead, you know, like, there was no certainty. There was no, I couldn't say, I had a friend, he was gonna plan to get married when he went back home. And I remember we used to tell him, "Come on, let's go to town and have some beers and look for the girls." He said, "No, I'm engaged. I'm gonna get married when I go back home." And he would send his money. Every time he got paid, he would send it back to his fiancee in the States. And he wouldn't go to town with us. He was a good kid. I mean, he would stay at the base, and, you know, he didn't drink or chase girls or anything like the rest of us. About a week later, he got killed. You know, and I said, "Look at that poor guy. You know, he was going to go home. He thought he was going to go home." And he was faithful to his girlfriend, his fiance, and I don't know if she knew that, because we tried to clear him and say, "Come on, you know, she won't know what you're doing." And he said, "No," and I said, "I'm getting married, so I'm going to save my money, and we're going to get married. We're going to buy a house." And he had his plans already. And boom, just like that, he was gone one day. I mean, we had a saying in Vietnam: "Here today, gone today." I could be talking to you right now in the morning, and by afternoon you'd be dead. That's the way the nature of war is. I mean, and after that, you know, it took me for a long time to get rid of that feeling where I just lived for day to day. That's all I did. I didn't care about tomorrow. I said, if I get a chance, to party today and, you know, pick up girls or whatever, I'm gonna do that today. Forget about it. There is no tomorrow for me. It was hard for me to.
Is that how you felt when you returned back? to
Yeah,
the States?
yeah, that's how I felt, Joanne. I couldn't, I was afraid to plan anything, because I figured, what if I get killed tomorrow or today? What if I get hit by a car, or, you know, in Chicago, if you get shot or something? But, you know, because I lived in a rough neighborhood with a lot of gangs, and I wasn't afraid, though. Whenever I go out every night, her mother would worry about me, because I go out and she wouldn't see me till I'd leave on a Friday night. She would see me maybe Sunday night. So, you know, and I had that feeling from Vietnam that, you know, I didn't want to plan anything. I was afraid if I planned something, boom, like that poor guy. He planned to go home and get married to his fiancée, his girlfriend. And then he was gone, just like that. And I said, well, it ain't going to be me. I'm going to live for today, man. I'm not going to live for tomorrow. So I used to tell my captain, he reprimand me, and, you know, like I said, that they'd find me drunk or fighting in town, or, you know, in the bars or with the girls. And he'd say to me, you know, "What's wrong?" He says, "You're a good soldier in the field, out, you know, we're out in the field, the jungle. But you come back here and you turn Indian on me." I said, "I'm part Indian." "Yeah, sir, you know." And I used to tell him, I say, "Can you guarantee I'm going home?" He says, "No, you know there's no guarantees, Doc." He says, "You know, you got to take the chance of everybody else." I said, "Well, sir, every night when I'm back out of that field, I'm gonna party lightly, politely, and all nightly." He says, "Hey," and then one time there was a platoon sergeant didn't like me up at headquarters company, and I don't know why he didn't like me, but he accused me of trying to kill him one day. And he said, "Hey, he tried to sneak up on me when I was on guard duty." He said, "You tried to kill him." I said, "Captain," I said, "Sir, let me tell you something. I don't care who I got to kill to go home." That guy was, he understood what I meant, but, you know, but that's the way it was. I mean, you know, and then when I was married, I love my wife because she was the mother of my sons, but it was hard for me, and it still is. I mean, I have a friend, she says, you're not very affectionate because, you know, she's a woman, you know. And it's just not, it's just not, I mean, I could tell her, yeah, I bring her flowers or, you know, candy and take her out to dinner and, you know, but it's hard for me to be close. You know what I'm saying, Joanne? I mean, I think it's been a war because before that, my mother was very loving. I was a mama's boy. Before I went to the army, you know, I was a mama's boy until I was about 16. Then I started hanging around with those gang members and I got in some trouble. But other than that, you know, I was always close to my mom. I mean, she breastfed me for 2 years. She says, you drank all my milk, John. She says, you're a little fat cow, little. She said, of all my siblings, she says, you drank all my milk. And I said, I still like that milk, Mom. But not from you. Like that song said, you know, because my mother's, and then I had all these girlfriends when I came back, and she would say to me, John, see all these girls, they like you, they want to marry you. And I says, Mom, I don't want to get married. I'm going to have a party. I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to have a good time because I was gone 3 years. And she said, don't you love any of them? And I says, well, it's like that song goes, you know, it ain't love, but it ain't bad. You ever hear that country western song?
Oh, John. I'm sorry.
And there's humorous aspects to it.
Okay. Compose myself here. Oh.
But anyway, yeah, I wound up getting divorced because my wife, she found another boyfriend. And I mean, I was devastated when I found out. I was really crushed. I never thought she'd do that. But I back on it. But I was cheating on her, so, you know, I couldn't judge her. You know what I'm saying, Joanne?
How long were you married?
We stayed married for about 17, 16 years.
After you got back to the States.
Well, no, I got married when I was 32 because we had a son. And
So you came back when you were,
I was partying for 10 years, yeah. I came out, I was 21.
okay.
My son was born, I was 31. And we got married a year later because she was from Mexico. She said if I'd marry her, she'd go back. She said, well, if you don't marry me, I'm going flying back to, she was from Acapulco. And I said, she said, I'm flying. If you don't marry me, I'm taking Kenny, my son's name was Kenny. I says, take Kenny back to Mexico. And I was still like in a party mode. I don't know. I said, yeah, well, what time's your flight leave? I'll take you to the airport. You know what I'm saying? So I buy you a one-way ticket. And she was gone about a year. And within about 6 months after that she left with my son, I couldn't, it wasn't in me. I couldn't do that. I had to go get him. I said, you know, my mother never left us, and, you know, she raised us the best she could. And like I said, I am what I am today because my mom, she was very loving and stern, though. She didn't put on, I was scared, I'm going to tell you, when I was a kid. My mother told me, come straight home from school. I came Zoom. I knew I had, you know, what time I had about 10 minutes I could play, you know, with my buddies, marbles, whatever, you know, back in those days, we shot marbles and everything. But once I knew 15 minutes, I knew I had a feeling. I said, I know she'd be looking for me. So, but anyway, yeah, she, I had a good, well, I had a happy childhood. I can say we were poor, but I mean, we didn't have a TV. We didn't have a phone. We had to borrow the neighbor's phone. And, you know, but we were always happy. You know, my mother made sure we had clean clothes. She always made sure we had food on the table. And everybody shared, you know, and my sisters, and to this day, you know, I remember I loved Christmas because it reminds me when I was small, and I'd be with my mom and my sisters, and Thanksgiving, and, you know, Halloween in Chicago and Bridgeport, man, I loved it, man. That's my favorite day, is Halloween and Christmas. So I really had a good time. And every time I come back, I always tell my sister, every day is one day closer to Christmas. Remember that.
Oh.
Every day is one day closer to Christmas. He said, it's only January. I said, well, another 360 days gonna be Christmas again. So I say, that's why I look at it. Every year I can say, just one day closer to Christmas. That's my favorite day was Christmas and Halloween. But thank God my sisters are still alive and my mom's gone. My dad, he died a sad death. He died alone in Chicago in Skid Row. You know what Skid Row is?
Mhm.
It's where all the bums live,
Mhm.
the alcoholics,
Mhm.
all the derelicts and the ne'er-do-wells. That's where he wound up to die by himself in the
Do
room.
your sisters live in Chicago also?
Oh yeah, they all live in Chicago. Well, except for one of my younger sisters. She lives in Texas. She lives in Houston. She's married to a preacher. So they move around a lot.
Mhm.
But my other four sisters, I had a total of, well, when my dad was me and my four sisters, then my mother got divorced him because he was an alcoholic. Then she remarried another gentleman and she had two more children, and my brother and my sister. So the total was, 5 girls and 2 boys. But except for my dad, it was just me and my 4 sisters. But we all get along. We all love each other. And, I love my sisters. They do anything for me.
Mhm.
I mean, there's ones who brought me back from Vietnam because, like I said, I don't know how I made it out of there because there'd be dead and wounded all around me and I wouldn't have a scratch. You understand, Joanne?
Mhm.
God must have been there. Then I came back, I was drinking a lot because I still thought, I was in that Vietnam mode. I think I was still back in Vietnam. I was physically here, but my brain or my memories were still back there and remembering those guys and that didn't make it and how tough they were. I never heard them complain or anything. They were good. They were good soldiers. They were good paratroopers, man.
Mhm.
And all I wanted to do was party. And I used to drink a lot and I had a lot of car accidents. I bought those real fast guy. I had a Charger, a Challenger, Cutlass Supreme. And until I got married, then I was buying 4-door cars. Before they had 2 doors,
Yeah.
Just for me and my girlfriends, took them up. And the car would be demolished and I'd walk away from it. I never killed anybody with a car. I never, hurt anybody. But my mother just told me all the time, God's telling you something, John. God's telling you something. You better straighten out. And now I'm better for it. I mean, now I don't drink or get drunk like I used to, Now I have a beer sometimes or I have some wine with my friend. We have dinner. She makes dinner. We have a glass of wine. So at first I thought I was an alcoholic, but I wasn't. It was just the war, the PTSD. And I recommend all the guys that I know that they have trouble, to go to the VA. They take good care of you. They did a lot for me. They saved me, I think. I had a mental health therapist. Her name was Brenda Doherty. And I think she's the one who really saved my life because I was going to kill, when I found out my wife was cheating, I was going to kill her boyfriend, my boss. But 2 words I don't like to hear in the VA hospital. You know what they are?
What?
You're feeling suicidal or you're feeling homicidal. You tell them, a doctor or anybody or nurse in there, that's what you're feeling. By law, they can't let you out of the hospital. Because if you go home and do something, they're responsible.
Mhm.
So as I tell my friends, there's 2 words they want to hear you say in the hospital is you're feeling suicidal or you're feeling homicidal. And they have a very good programs, and I'm better, but I'll never forget Vietnam. And I'm proud of my unit. I was proud to be a paratrooper. I did my time, and I didn't want to. I never thought I'd wind up. I swear to God, when I went to Vietnam, I never thought, Joanne, I'd wind up in actual combat. I thought I'd wind up working in a hospital, or a laboratory or something. That's what that was my goal.
Mhm.
And I never thought I'd be really working with wounded people or
Combat line.
combat. Or I remember the first time I was in the field when we had 3 dead soldiers. I had to sleep with those 3 dead soldiers right next to me because the helicopter wouldn't bring them out because they said, "Are they alive or dead?" And they said they're dead. So I said, "Well, we'll pick them up in the morning." because, they were taking care of some other, they were wounded, because they take the wounded first, because if you're dead, there's nothing they can do for you.
Mhm.
But when we put them in the ponchos, wrapped them, and I kept looking at them all night, just thinking to myself, I hope I'm not one of those guys one of these days. That might be me in there, you know what I mean? It could have happened, but
Mhm.
like I says, my mother, my sister must have prayed a lot, and I prayed too, but, I don't know. I used to say the Lord's Prayer every time we went on a patrol or a mission. I would, the Lord's Prayer, Psalm 23, the Lord is my shepherd.
Absolutely.
I say that, and then I said, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Because I walked through that valley a lot of times. A lot of us didn't make it out of there. A lot of guys didn't make it out of that valley. It was a sad time sometimes, But God was good to me, so I can't complain. And I just want to tell my sons, that, I want them to be proud of me.
I'm sure they are.
'Cause, I did what I had to do, and I try to make an example. I tell babies, I say, that's why when you're a man, you got to be responsible. You got to, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. And if you have a woman, you be good to her, and you respect her, and if tell her, don't be afraid to tell her you love her, or, be kind, Because it says in the Bible, you treat your wife like you treat yourself. You know what I'm saying? Even though the woman is a weaker vessel, but you're not going to be mean to yourself. So why would you want to be mean to her? So I said, don't learn from me. I mean, as long as you respect and love each other, that's the main thing. You know what I mean? So that's what I learned. I says, I was wrong. So I used to cheat on my wife, and when she did it to me, it hurt. It really did. I was crushed. I didn't, as a man, it hurt my pride. That's what it really was. My mother says, and I told him, I'm going to kill my wife. She said, you don't want that blood on your hands, son. I said, just get a divorce. You don't have to. My mother was dying of cancer, and she said, I can't take care of your children. Who's going to take care of those little boys? She says, your sisters got their own families. You don't have to put that burden on them. She made sense. She says, you don't want that blood. She says, they're going to waste up in an orphanage. You're going to be in jail. She's going to be dead. Who wins? She says, don't even think of that, John. My mother was a smart woman.
Yes, she was.
She had been through a lot, too. She's and my dad, but that's basically my story. I was proud of my unit. I'm proud. I'll be a parachute to dad. I wear this stuff out of memory to those guys who wore it. When they died, they were wearing these patches and everything.
Uh-huh.
That's what we wore when, that's why I respected them.
Did you receive any awards or?
No, I got a Bronze Star, and I got a combat medical badge, and I got a combat infantry badge, and my jump wings, which I listed there, which that's the only things I'm really proud of,
Mhm.
because not too many people have those.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I could have got a Purple Heart if I would have got in that helicopter when I got wounded, but like I said, I took care of myself.
Mhm.
I gave myself some morphine, and then I just put a Band-Aid on and I stayed with my men because they needed me. I was part of a team. When you're part of a team, it's like when Mark asked you to do this for him, right?
Mhm.
You're part of the team, so you're helping him out because it's like because you work together, right?
Mhm.
That's how we were. I couldn't leave them out there in the lurch because I knew they were dependent on me as a medic. They said, Doc, you're not that belly. And they were looking at me with those big cow eyes like, you're not leaving us without a medic, are you, John? And I said, hey, Doc, I said, shut up, man. I said,
Could have been your ticket out, but you stayed.
I could have got on the helicopter. My lieutenant looked at me and says, it's your call, Doc. He says, you want to get on the chopper, you're wounded. You have every right to get on that helicopter. Dust off, medevac. He's looking at me like, my men were looking at me like,
How-
the first I said, I went toward the helicopter and I pretended like I was going to get on. Then I said, nah, I said, go ahead. I said, put someone else in, put another guy on there. And I said, I'll stay with the men,
How much longer were you over there after you were?
Well, I had about 3 more months.
3 more months?
I was short. I was getting short. They call it getting short. You heard that expression?
I understand what you mean.
Yeah, when a guy says he's short in the military, means he's getting close to his time to go home. You know what I'm saying? So they say, I'm so short I can't hang jump from a curb, you know, because you're so short. They got different jokes about that. But I enjoyed being a paratrooper. You know, it was about a bunch of guys, and I came out of the 101st Airborne. I went to Vietnam with the 173rd, which is on my back patch. And then I wound up with the 82nd Airborne. They were all good units. They were all hardcore American paratroopers, and they didn't fool around. And I tell you, when you were in these units, you soldiered. They didn't fool around with you. You did your job, or you know, hey, you wound up in Leavenworth or someplace. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You know where Leavenworth is, right?
Prison.
Federal prison. Yeah.
Yeah.
My sergeant used to tell us that. He says, "You mess about here, do not stop at go and collect 200."
Mhm.
You ever hear that?
Yeah.
Monopoly is that. He'd always tell us that. Do not stop at go and collect 200. Go straight to jail.
Mhm.
So it was either that or you wind up in a box, on one of them, you know, coffin.
What were when you were in Vietnam, what were your living quarters? Like, what did you?
Oh man, we lived in the mud. We lived in tents.
You had a tent?
Well,
Okay.
if you were lucky, you lived in the tent, but in the jungles, which was most of the time we were mostly in the jungles. You slept on when it wasn't raining. Well, but it always rained in Vietnam. So, what would you do is you grab your poncho and you would set up. We call it a hooch, and you get you cut down 4 bamboo stakes, and you would. We used to have these jungle fatigues, and they had like those cargo pants, like,
Mhm.
and they would have straps in there. Straps they would keep the water, or I guess it was mostly to keep the snakes out from getting up your pants or something. And you would use those straps to put them on the ends of because your poncho would have 4 ringlets on each corner, a ringlet, and then you would tie it off with these. You'd cut some bamboo or stakes from the trees, and you would, with those straps, you would tie it in there, and they were real strong because they were, you know, they're made of nylon almost. So we used the laces from our boots, and then where your head goes through the poncho hangs over your head. You would tie that off, and then you put a stake underneath there, and then you would slide your air mattress under it if you had one underneath there, and you know you would stay dry when you were on guard duty, because everybody had full guard duty, and we lived in the mud. And suddenly it would rain, man. You find yourself floating on the water, and your air mattress. You say, "Man, where am I going?" You know, and you'd be on the water, and it was. And not only did you fight the enemy, you had to fight the elements. You had to fight the rain, and then the mosquitoes, because they had the guy that I was joining the army with. He caught malaria. He almost died on it. He got bit by a mosquito.
Mhm.
And he caught malaria. They had to put him in the hospital for about a month. And you fought the mosquitoes, and then they had snakes. They were very poisonous snakes. A couple of my buddies died from snake bites. The bamboo vipers, well, they were pretty. They were like green and yellow. They're real nice, light green. But they call them bamboo vipers because they would hide inside the bamboo, and you couldn't see it. They looked just like the bamboo.
Mhm.
But if they bit you, they're very venomous.
Mhm.
Then they had those, like, they weren't water moccasins, but they were like water snakes.
Mhm.
And one time we were crossing the river, and one of them bit one of my buddies, and he died. He drowned. He let go of the rope. We were crossing on a rope, and he got bit, and we had to go look for him. It took us a couple of days. We found him later.
Mm.
And it was people getting bitten by scorpions or tarantulas or big spiders and centipedes. One time I was laying down, I was reading a book, and I felt something coming up my leg, and I looked down, and I had no t-shirt on or nothing. It was so hot. I just had my pants and my boots on. And here I look at this thing, and it's a big centipede like this, about this long, crawling up my leg. Joanne, I said, "Oh man, I'm gonna get bit by this thing." And it was one of the poisonous ones.
Oh.
So I guess you just made me mad. So I said, "I'm gonna count to 3. I'm gonna jump up. Hopefully it'll fall off, and I'll surprise it." So that's what I did. I jumped right up, and it fell off. And I looked for that son of a gun, and I sprayed it with. We used to carry this mosquito repellent. for the mosquitoes at night. You rub it on at night or any exposed
Mhm.
flesh. And I got there and I sprayed it and then I lit it on fire because it's like got alcohol in there. That's part of it. The mosquito repellent had alcohol in it. And I lit that thing on fire and I stomped out at him. I was so angry. I said, "You scared me, you know." I said, "Let that be a lesson to you." But no, we were
You said it was very hot there?
oh, yeah, it was very hot, especially in that sun. Oh, and if you're out in the open, oh my goodness, if you're on a rice paddy, oh man, those rice paddies are brutal. Because, you know, you're walking along and they're like about a foot long and they're mud. Because you ever seen rice paddies? They're like squares.
Not
They grow
in
rice in
person.
them. They grow
Mhm.
rice in them, those Vietnamese farmers. And if you fall into it, it's mud like. And they fertilize that with human or animal excrement. That's their fertilizer. And it stinks. I mean, it was, you know, you walk on those little, they call them dikes. They're like this wide, maybe about a foot wide at the most. And there's so many guys walking on it, finally it gets weak and it collapses. And if you step on it and you fall in, then you got to get out of there, man. And then the mud would cling to your legs, and you know, it's like a suction. You know, it was. I used to hate the rice paddies. And the sun's beating on you, and you got your equipment on, and that helmet. Of course, when they start shooting, you wish you could get your whole body inside that helmet.
Mhm,
You know what I mean?
mhm.
Because that's the only steel part of it, you know. But I never got shot. Thank God. I just got hit there like shrapnel. And I hurt my arm, and we were jumping at night one night, and I broke my arm. We made, like I said, we made the only parachute jump combat over there. But actually, we made 2 jumps before that jump. People don't know that. We made 2 jumps before we made that jump. And whatever they call it, like a practice jump. But I was proud to serve with those guys. They were the best guys I've ever been with. They were tough. They knew their job, and they protected me. And I was, you know, and I tried to save as many as I could of them. And I couldn't save all of them, though. A lot of them were too badly wounded. And I was like I said, the responsibility was my job to determine who goes first. And it was a lot of for a 19-year-old kid from Chicago
Heavy burden.
to do that. And then when I worked for the state, I was doing the same thing again. I was helping people get jobs and training. And sometimes they would ask me, "What do you think, Doc? What do you think I should do?" And I says, "It's your life. You got to tell me what you want to do. You want to go to a job? You want to go to training? You want to go to college? Or what do you want to do?" And I couldn't make the decision. That's your decision. So you got to do that. Or then when I was working for unemployment, then I worked for parole. I was trying to tell those guys, you know, to stay out of trouble and, you know, straighten out their lives. I give them, he says, if it wasn't too serious of a crime, I says, you could probably get in the military. Go in the military and learn how to be a man, stand on your feet, like I did. And you know, I give myself an example. And if not, I would. Then I worked for unemployment insurance. I had to decide if you were eligible for the money. A lot of those people depended on it. I had women that used to cry at my desk. I always kept a box of tissue because they used to tell me, "Mr. Garcia, I need that money to support my family." But do you know what unemployment insurance, you know, unemployment comp?
Mhm.
I had to decide if it was your fault you weren't working or the company's fault.
Mhm.
It could never be your fault.
Mhm.
It always had to be the company's fault why you weren't working.
Mhm.
Because if it was your fault, then we couldn't pay you. A lot of women, they were single women, single mothers, single parents. They had children and, you know, their husband was gone supposedly. I doubt it, because, but anyway, that's another story. But anyway, they wouldn't have babysitters and they couldn't go to work. I said, well, why didn't the company says you failed to show up for work a couple of days, and they terminated you because, you know, you were, they thought you quit. Because if you don't call in, and you can't prove to me that you called in, because if you bring me your phone records and you know, then I can say, yeah, she said, if it's on there that you called that morning, I'll go with what you said. I don't care what the company says. If I see it on the bill that says, did you call that morning on that date at that time? I say, okay. No, she said she called in. I think she did call in, or he did, or whatever. But a lot of times, you know, if they couldn't prove to me, you know, it was hard for, you know, for single women because they had to have good child care. I mean, you know, your child is sick. I mean, you're not going to go to work with, you
Right.
call them in, and a lot of times these companies, they don't understand that. I mean, you know, but, and as a parent, I myself, I knew that you still got to pay rent, you still got to pay, you know, light, gas, you still got to feed your kids. I mean, and if there's no money coming in, how are you going to do that? I don't think women do that sometimes, you know. Oh, yeah, that's a rough world.
It is.
So I always try to rule in favor of the applicant. I try to find a way how to help the people because that was in my nature to help people. You know what I mean, Joanne?
Mm-hmm.
And the companies, they hated me. They complained to my boss. He said, "Hey, what's that, Mr. Garcia now? He's always giving away our money." I tell my boss, "Hey, if they don't like my decision, they can take me to appeal. If I make my original decision, and I say this person was not, you know, it was not their fault that they're unemployed, I go with that decision." I said, "Well, both parties have appeal rights. If I go against you as the claimant, you have the right to appeal. And if the company doesn't like it, they have a right to appeal." But I write that thing so good because I knew the law. I could quote the law. And my decisions were based on the law. And they would, so it was always, I always had like responsibility for other people, you understand? Because I knew that if I made the wrong decision, that person might not be able to feed her or get kicked out of their apartment or something, you know? So it's a very, you know, it's like being back in Nam again. I'm trying to help people, but I can't save all of them, you know? And if the woman didn't call in or can't prove to me she called in or she slapped her boss and or somebody punched them, see, whoever is a moving party, that's a lot of, you got to have the burden of proof. It's like being in court. I was like a judge because I had to judge those cases. It's called adjudicator, but we were at the first level. So it was like being back in Nam again to me. I mean, helping people. Are we good?
Oh, yeah, but I want to ask you a few more questions. If
Oh,
that's
okay.
I
Well,
was
you
just
said
going to
you
ask
said
you.
I like to talk. I like to talk.
Oh, yeah, you're doing awesome. You said like being back in Nam, and you said some things will like flash you back there. What, a certain smell or what?
Yeah, if I
That
saw
will give you
like if I
flashbacks.
smelled certain like leaves burning.
Mhm.
Remember we when Sunday when we would bomb them, the trees, because they were so dry sometimes, there was dry times, the grass or the trees would catch fire. And they would, you know, you go in there and the one smell I don't want to smell again is the smell of burning flesh. Like when we used to drop that napalm, that would burn everything. I'd burn people, pigs, chickens, everything, grass, trees. The only thing wouldn't burn was some of those vines. Remember, those vines would still be there. And I'd see that. You know what napalm is?
Mhm.
It's like burning jelly. It's like burning gasoline. And you would see it dripping from the vines. It wouldn't burn, it burned the leaves on the vine, but the vine itself would still be there. And then I'd see that stuff dripping. And I'd look and I asked the sergeant, the first time I saw it, I said, "What's that stuff and that smell dripping from that vine?" He says, "This is napalm. This is napalm. We just, you know, and that, you see how I remember that big burst?" See, I said, "That's napalm." I thought it was a bomb. He said, "No, it's napalm." And you smell that burning leaves, or I'm in the forest, you smell that leaves decaying and all that. That's when my sons were in the Boy Scouts. I couldn't go camping with them because I flash back. Man, I think I'm back in the jungles. I'm looking for my weapon. I'm looking to see a booby trap. I'm looking for the enemy. I'm looking like every tree, you know, and
To this day, is it still that
yeah,
way for you?
yeah. I still feel that when I go into the woods. I'm looking and you know, my body all of a sudden gets tense. I can feel the adrenaline because when you're scared, the adrenaline's pumping. In a way, it's good to be scared because you're more alert. Your body's, you know, you're more aware of your surroundings when you got that adrenaline going through. So that's why they say sometimes it's good to have a little bit of fear because you get that adrenaline going. Or I hear a song, like I hear the Stones or the Beatles or that music they played in those days, man, I flash right back. I says, man, it reminds me of the time we were in the field or we were in the bar and we were drinking and I was drinking with so-and-so and we were having a good time. And it just brings back the good times too, you know, and not just the bad times. The music especially makes me think of the good times, you know. So we go downtown and we.
You were on leave then, or you were R&R then, so.
No, Aaron, I was totally different, man. That was one long. That was a 7-day drunk, man. That's all you do is wine, woman, and song for 7 days, Joanne. That's, you know what I'm saying?
I know what you're
Boy.
saying.
That's all you do, man. It's party time.
Mhm.
But or see a movie and it'll remind me of Nam, and especially like
Have you watched?
Deer
any-
Hunter, Apocalypse Now,
Have you, Platoon and like those?
Platoon. Yeah,
Have you
Platoon was
watched
real
those?
good. I mean that's exactly what we did in the field. We'd be on ambush and you better not fall asleep.
Mhm,
That's dangerous. I mean, the Vietnamese will walk right in on you.
mhm.
But overall, it was an experience. I tell you, I never forget that. I was 19. I came back. I was 20. But I learned, but it had very sad times. We one time a guy shot himself in the foot. He was scared, and he didn't want to go out, because he was so scared of getting killed. And I tried to tell him, I says, look, we're all scared. He was a new guy. He just got in about a week before. And I'd been there like about 6 or 7 months. So I more or less, after about a month, you get sort of like acclimated to, because you're with guys and we're all together, you feel better because they're with you. And you become friends with them and, we look out for each other. But his kid, he got so scared. He was terrified. He said, I can't go out there, Doc. I'm scared. And I says, look, I said, we're all scared. I says, you're not the only one. I mean, it's normal for you to be scared. I said, just calm down. Just listen to the guys in your platoon. I mean, your squad. I mean, your squad. He was my platoon. He says, and the squad leader, he'll, just listen to them, because I used to feel good when I was with those guys, because I hear something, I say, what was that? And I remember my buddy would say, he'd sit up and he'd listen, and he'd look, and he'd look at me and says, Doc, it's just the wind coming through the trees. It's nothing. And I felt reassured then, I said, you sure? He goes, hey, Doc, I'm telling you. Trust me, it's the wind. So if it was I'd be the first to start shooting. And this kid, he was very terrified. And takes his .45, shoots himself in the foot. Starts bleeding like crazy. I couldn't stop the bleeding. I told the captain, I said, sir, you got to get this guy out of here. He's going to die. He's going to bleed to death. We don't get him out of here. So we called a dust off, medevac. And they asked us, how many guys do you have wounded? And we said, we didn't tell them what happened. We didn't explain that he shot himself in the foot. We would have probably said, hell with that guy. We just told him we had a wounded American. And they said, well, how many do you have? And he said, just one. He said, one? He said, well, listen, he says, we're busy on this other area. We got more wounded on this other hill. But as soon as we get through, we'll go pick your guy up.
Mhm.
And I did to my captain, I said, sir, I don't think he's going to make it. He says, you got to get him soon, because I couldn't stop the bleeding. I kept putting brushes, and he was screaming and everything. And I says, and it was a self-inflicted wound. And then we put on an SOS for any helicopter in the area that was passing by, if they could come pick up a wounded. Like I said, we didn't tell them what happened. We just said we had a wounded American, very badly wounded, and they needed to be evacuated to the MASH, back to the medevac. And these two officers, two majors, they were in a helicopter. They were coming from some mission. They were just driving by or flying by, and they heard the SOS. And they said, yeah, we heard you. We're going to come in and get your man. We'll take him to the hospital, medevac. Well, I said, he says, the doctor, the helicopter coming in. So it was already getting dark. And I remember we were on this big landing zone. And it was big. I mean, it wasn't a small one. And I remember that looking up, and I could see the light, because there was a light underneath the helicopter, because they had to have a light to see where they're going, where they're landing at night. And I saw that light and I said, wow, he said, I told the captain, tell him that he's right on target. He's gonna be able, he's landing right on the right spot. And for some reason, to this day, I never know what happened, Joanne. But that helicopter, it was just about to land. All of a sudden, they go back up again. And I heard the lieutenant, or the captain talking, saying, what's wrong? And the major said, oh, we don't like the approach or something. He said, we're gonna go around and come back in. So they get up and they go around again. And they ran right into some trees and crashed, and they both got killed. For trying to help this kid that shot himself, you know what I mean? So 2 Americans got killed trying to save this kid who, was, I don't know what happened to that kid. I don't know, they might have put him in jail for all I care. Put him in Leavenworth, because it was a self-inflicted wound. It wasn't from the enemy. He shot himself. So, there was crazy stuff like that, real little coincidences. Like, it happened, a lot of coincidences in Vietnam. I was supposed to be here, and something happened the last minute. I wasn't there, and then the people who were there, they got killed or wounded. And, you know what I mean? One guy, I just got busted. I was just a corporal, and he was a sergeant. He said, he was a medic too, and he said, I'm going with that platoon, because he had a buddy in that platoon. So he says, hey, Garcia, you take this other platoon. He said, I'll take that platoon. And I said, you pulling rank? He goes, yeah. I said, all right, go ahead. And I said, take that platoon. It's all the same. We're all going to the same place. That platoon ran into some trouble. He got shot right in the head. He didn't die, though. I heard he got hit pretty bad, though. But had that happened, Joanne, it would have been me. So little things like that happen, you know what I'm saying? Another time I changed platoons, and that platoon, that guy Moses Green, he was a medic. The platoon, I was originally with that platoon. If I had been with that platoon, my name would be on that wall. He'd be sitting here. But it happened, I don't know why or how I got pulled out of that platoon. I went to another platoon, second platoon. He goes out with that platoon. They all get killed or wounded. So, it has to be God. I mean, I have no explanations, But it was not for the faint of heart, I tell you that. But I love those guys, man. They were tough guys, man. And my sons asked me, who the toughest guys you know, Dad? And I says, those guys were with me in Vietnam. Those guys who got killed out there, they were the tough guys. I said, I wasn't tough, but those guys with me, they were the tough guys. And we had to carry something. I remember one time, you know what heat stroke is? Yeah, some of these guys with heat stroke. And from all the equipment we were carrying, how hot it was, and I guess some of their bodies couldn't take the heat, and they would go into heat stroke. And a couple of guys got that, and we had to carry them. Oh, was that brutal? Oh, man. We had to carry them through the jungles. And we had no stretcher. We had to make, with bamboo poles, we had to make makeshift stretchers. And some of us had to, those poor guys, they had to carry these 2 guys. And then the rest of us had to carry their equipment to the next, what do you call it, LZ, a landing zone, where we could get them on a helicopter. To this day, I don't know if they made it, because they were pretty sick, man. They were in a heat stroke. They were burning up. I was pouring water on, giving them water and everything. And I told the captain, I said, I don't know, you got to get them out of here fast. They got heat stroke. They're going to die. And I hope they got them back in time.
And
I don't know. Huh?
You don't know.
I don't know. Because once they get on them helicopters, Joanne, I don't know what happened to them. My job was to make sure to keep them alive to get on the helicopter. That was my primary mission, was to get these guys alive onto the helicopter. And then, like on New Year's Day, was supposed to be a ceasefire. New Year's Day of '67, there was supposed to be no firing. It was supposed to be a ceasefire. And we didn't trust them, because no sooner than we had set up our perimeter and they started dropping mortars on us. And so our colonel he said, I just want one patrol to go out, one platoon to go out and go around the perimeter. And my lieutenant, they drew cards. to see who would take it out.
Mhm.
The low man had to take that patrol out. So my lieutenant lost, so we had to go out. And his radio operator got wounded that day. It was January 1st, and he was from Pittsburgh, and it was Charles Rayford, who was the RTO, the radio he's carried the radio for the lieutenant. And they got hit. They got ambushed right as they were crossing this little creek. And I remember I asked the lieutenant, "Who got hit?" He said, "My RTO, Rayford." And I knew the guy because we used to put up at night. We would set up our tent together, and we would talk about, Chicago. He was from Pittsburgh, and I was from Chicago. And he just came back from Pittsburgh because his grandmother had died, so he had gotten an emergency leave to go bury his grandmother. And then he came back, and I asked him, I says, "Hey, Rayford, why'd you come back?" I said, "You should have stayed in Pittsburgh. You only had about 3 months to go." He said, "No," I says, "They told me I had to come back." He died that day, on January 1st. He's the only guy that got killed on that day from my unit. I always look at his name. It's January 1st, 1967. And he got hit in the stomach. And I remember when I found him, I couldn't tell where he got hit. And he was in shock already. And I'm trying to get, and he stopped breathing. I gave him mouth to mouth, and I gave him a heart massage, and then I got him breathing again. And I finally figured out the bullet went through his stomach, and the way I pulled his liver out.
Oh.
And but he was breathing when I got him on that helicopter. I mean, because we were out in the middle of the jungle, the helicopter couldn't land. So he dropped one of those stretchers through the trees. It was right over that creek. There was like a little opening, and I said, "There's an opening up there. If you could get it right there, I could put him on there." So he dropped that striker frame or whatever they call it, that stretcher, and they put him on there, and he was still breathing. They took him. He died. They said he died on arrival. He was that DOA died on arrival. So I couldn't save everybody, Joanne.
No.
That's the way war is. War is hell.
It is.
What are you gonna do? So I love those guys though. I always think about them. That's my story.
And quite a story it is.
I got more. I got more. I was there a whole year, and
Well,
we were always either. It's like when I used to work at the state, and I used to go out to the field to develop jobs for the veterans. I had to give an itinerary. In the morning, I had to tell my boss what companies I was visiting, because I would go and ask them to hire veterans, for the state of Illinois. And that was my job as a job developer. I loved that job. That job was a good job because you'd be out in the field. And I go out there, and I remember I used to go to some of these companies, and they show them my card from the state of Illinois, Department of Labor. They bring out typewriter. They bring out calculators and all the rest. I said, "Wait, no." I said, they thought I was investigating or something, And I tell them, I said, "No, I'm just here to ask if you got any openings and hire veterans, for any of your job openings." And I've even brochures, little brochures and stuff. And he said, "Oh yeah, okay, Mr. Garcia, And I wasn't one of those guys like to sit there and talk and talk and talk. I want to get out of there. So I could go get some beers, My buddy used to live in Addison, Illinois. He was just divorced. He was a bachelor like me, and so he lived in this complex where a lot of single people, girls and guys. So they had a pool there, and they always had girls by the pool, in the evening, in the afternoon. So I wanted to get out of there. So we go over there and meet my buddy by that pool, drinking beer, But sometimes it was funny because that was a good job. I love that job. It was job development. And there's a lot of interesting things that happen out there with that job development. But they asked me if I wanted a job. I said, "How about you, Mr. Garcia? You want to work for us? You speak Spanish, right?" I said, "Yeah, fluently." "Yeah, because we got a lot of Spanish-speaking employees, I said, "Nice, I really got a job. I work for the state, I got a pension and everything, insurance." And he said, "Well, think about it, think it over." And I said, "Well, and if you send us some people, make sure they speak English." I said, "Why don't they?" "No, they all." He goes, "Well, some of them, but a lot of them don't." He says, "Like when?" He said, "We give them an application, they fill it out, we got a little sentence in there, do you speak any foreign languages? And they put down there, yes, English. But it was a good job. I mean, I love that job development.
Well, I think we will wrap it up here. I would love to sit here and.
Chit chat some more.
Oh, absolutely. I've
Because
enjoyed it.
that job with the state, boy, I tell you, man, they asked me, that's how they promote, then they had me promoting the ex-felons, coming out of joining. I was a parole officer. And somebody comes and said, what kind of criminals do you got? I said, well, I'll tell you what, we got the ones with the guns and the ones with the knives. Which one do you want? I try to look at the humorous side of things, you know what I mean?
Mhm, mhm.
Life's too serious sometimes.
It is.
The war was serious enough for me.
Very,
And
yes.
even then, we joke around. I remember some of the guys would say, hey, Doc, I thought you got killed on the last operation. I mean, that's how the kind of humor. It was, people didn't,
Mhm.
they say, how can you say something like that? But that's the way it was. Because you had to laugh, because if you had to laugh at death. You learn how to laugh a little bit at death sometimes. I mean, you didn't want to, but that's the way we were. I mean, we were hardened soldiers, man. We had to do the worst thing in the world, kill people. I mean,
Did what you had to do to survive.
that was our job. I mean, the infantry, we had an ambush. People forget, when you go to training for the military, they don't teach you how to wound anybody. They say you got to kill that target. They don't say wound that target. They say you got to kill that target.
Mhm.
They say, you got to kill the target. So, when you do it, like I said, I was a Christian. I was a mama's boy. I used to be scared to fight when I was a kid. You know what I mean? But now, it's different. But you learn how to do what you got to do, Joanne. They would encourage us to kill as many as we could, because they give you we had like a little running contest. Whoever killed the most in that week, you got a 3-day pass. And sometimes the only way you could prove it is you had to
An ear.
cut ears. And one time, the first time I saw one of my buddies cutting his ears, and I said, he had his bayonet out, and I said, hey, Bowie, what are you doing? He goes, cutting ears. Says, you want one, Doc? I says, I want to break up a set. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
No, not for me. I don't want to mutilate anybody, but I don't want nobody mutilating me. I don't want to mutilate anybody. But sometimes those gooks, they would mutilate American bodies, and some of the guys would get very angry, and they'd say, well, we're going to do it too.
Mhm.
So, but there's a certain type of guy to do that. I couldn't do that. I remember when we were in training, sometimes we had to stitch up some of the guys. I didn't like that, because you had to put the needles through the skin and, like sewing.
Mhm.
And some guys like doing it. Some of the medics would do it. And I said, I tell you what, you do the sewing, you put the stitches on, I'll take them out. I like taking them out. Well, after a couple of days,
Yeah.
they would heal, and it was easy. You just, grab the forceps and you grab your scalpel and you cut it and pull them out, put some hydrogen peroxide and put some nystatin or bastration ointment that I carried, and put a Band-Aid over it, and it healed, you know what I mean? But that I enjoyed, but when they come to sewing them up, I said, oh my God, I guess, first you had to shoot them with Novocaine. Then you had to, or lidocaine, whatever. And then you had to stitch them with that needle. It's like sewing. Some guys really like it. Some medics liked it. My buddy, he says, yeah, I'll put them in.
Mhm.
I said, well, you put them in and I'll take them out. That was the deal.
That was the deal.
I carried 10 syringes of morphine, in case somebody got wounded.
Mhm.
But I'll never forget Vietnam, Joanne. The day I die, it's etched in here.
I don't see how you could.
I still remember names, and everybody says, hey, Doc, how do you remember all that? And I says, I don't know if it's a curse or a blessing. God gave me a good memory. So, like I said, we didn't have a TV or a phone or anything, and I read books. I read a lot of books. To this day, you go to my house, I got books, magazines all over the place. I love libraries.
Mhm.
That was my fortress of solitude when I was a kid. I love going to the library. Chicago Public Libraries. I just sit there and I just took all those books, man. I said, wow. People say, how do you know so much stuff? I said, I read. I read books. History books, books on anything. I even learned how to read Spanish. My mother used to read, she was from Mexico, she would read books in Spanish. And some of them even had little pictures in it. And I look and they say, these girls in there. I'm looking and I said, man, I wonder what they're saying. So I started looking and it was so easy for me, you know, because the way my mother taught us how to speak Spanish, that's exactly how you would see the words. So I just said, that's easy. And there's a lot of Spanish words, I mean, American words that are based on Spanish. I don't know if people know that. Like corral, rodeo, those are all Spanish words. Pronto and, you know, vamoose, those are all Spanish words. You know, they all have a Spanish derivative. Because, you know, Texas and California belong to Mexico. So, you know, most of the cowboys and everything were Mexicans anyway. They taught the Americans how to ride horses, you know, and they call them vaqueros. That's what they say. In English, they call them buckaroos. But it's the same words, vaquero. Except they just, Americans, they killed the word. I mean, they got their own,
Slaughtered it.
like,
Okay.
like the hoosgow. You know what the hoosgow is?
No.
When a cowboy says, yeah, he's in the hoosgow, he's in jail.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
a Texan word. I mean, it's a cowboy word. You ask it, they say, oh, where's so and so? He's in the hoosgow. There's Bob. He's in
Okay,
those.
well, we'll go ahead and wrap up
Wrap it up.
here
I
today.
enjoy talking to you.
I
I could talk to you all
enjoyed this
evening.
immensely. Yeah,
Huh?
it's been my honor. Thank you. Thank you for participating. Thank you for your
I'm glad you
service.
listened.
Thank you for your
Good
service.
listener. But my
Appreciate it.
my experience in the United States military was good and it was sad, but for the most part, I think it was a good experience for me. I came away with a lot more than I thought I would. You know, it was an experience for me, and I'm just sad that not everybody made it back with me. You know, all my friends that got killed over there, and they died. You know, doing what they thought was a good thing, fighting communism, and we.
Again, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Yeah, I was proud to serve. I was really proud to be a paratrooper, man. I didn't think I could jump because I had hydrophobia. I thought I had hydrophobia. I was scared of heights. I remember I was a kid. Sometimes we played baseball in the alley, and we'd hit the ball up on the roof of the garage. I wouldn't go up there. I said it's too high, and then you know how high a garage is. I mean, you know, and you're a paratrooper jumping from like 1,500 feet. I mean, you know. You're jumping out of those towers are 40 story, I mean 40 feet. And I just
And you
want
volunteered to do that.
Huh?
You volunteered to do that.
Oh yeah, like I told you, they can't draft you into the paratroopers. You got to volunteer. You got to beg them to let you go. You actually got to say I want to be a paratrooper, and they brainwash you. They instill that into you. They tell you it's just, if something happens, don't come crying saying that you know it's rough. You volunteered to be here. We didn't tell you. You wanted to be here, so they would. They tell you in the beginning. It says, you know, some of you guys are going to get killed in Vietnam. They don't know who. It says you come airborne, you go airborne with paratroopers. Some of you guys are going to get killed. So if you're scared, there's a door. There's a door right there. Leave. Nothing will be said because if you're scared now, it's only going to get worse. So some of you guys are going to get killed or wounded in Vietnam. So if you think you can't take it, there's the door. But if you stay, then you're going to take what comes. So we have one saying: you hope for the best, expect the worst, and take what comes. And like I told my boss at the state when I was on an itinerary, he said, "Where were you, John?" I says, "Sir, let me tell you something. This job is like being in Vietnam again. I got three statuses. I'm either in the field, I'm coming from the field, or I'm going to the field." So they say, "Oh, okay."
That's all you need to know.
Yeah, that's all you need to know because this is on the itinerary.
Okay. Well, thank you, John.
You know,
Thank you.
and you throw